Welcome, everyone. In this video, we're going to talk through some of the best multi-card combos available in the Vibes TCG. Card combos are one of the most magical parts of any trading card game, since the way that the cards can interact with each other, you can end up with this really powerful effect that's much stronger than the individual cards themselves. These combos can end up really shaping the deck building process and even warping the entire metagame. We're going to be going through all the different combos, kind of from least powerful to most powerful. But one thing to keep in mind is that any card combo that appears on this list is already very powerful. There are all sorts of combos, which we're not going to be discussing in this video, that are either not very strong or haven't been discovered yet. And if I missed a powerful card combo, please let me know down in the comments so I can include it in the next version of this video. All right, let's jump in. The first card combo revolves around Silent Snowglobe. So what Silent Snowglobe says, which is the card in the center here, it says all penguins lose all abilities. You can't play any additional penguins as long as this relic remains in play. You basically have Silent Snowglobe, which removes all the abilities from all the penguins. And so this is already pretty powerful because a lot of decks rely on the abilities that their penguins have. But so when you play Silent Snowglobe, you often like make the opponent's deck much less weak, but you still need a way to win the game yourself. And so this can be combined with two different cards. So on the left, we've got a penguin with great Mystique. And so the way that this works is it says this penguin doesn't participate in vibe checks. Uh, when you flop it, in the action phase, it says put 6/5 counters on this penguin. So basically, what you can notice with Silent Snow Globe is it removes abilities, but it doesn't remove vibe counters. So you'll play Penguin with Great Mystique, flop it. Now all of a sudden it has 6/5 counters. Next turn, flop it. It has 18 or 12 vibe counters. And then when you play Snow Globe, all of a sudden the ability of this penguin doesn't participate in vibe checks goes away. So now you have a 18 vibe penguin, maybe a 24 vibe penguin that does all of a sudden participate in vibe checks. So that in itself is very powerful. And then the other card you can combine with it is Bashful Swordsman Penguin, which is a 14 vibe penguin that says whenever this penguin wins a vibe check, if this penguin is unflopped, ice that penguin. So the issue with Bashful Swordsman Penguin is, right, it will win the vibe check, but then it will ice itself. But again, that ability goes away. And so then you basically just have a 14 vibe penguin. And so the really nice thing about Snow Globe with Bashful Swordsman is if you have 8 rods, you can play them on the same turn. So the way that this combo kind of works is you play Penguin with Great Mystique, flop it a few times, maybe get 6 to 18 vibe counters on it. Then you play Bashful Swordsman and Snow Globe in the same turn. And now your opponent is face down with a 24 and a 14 vibe penguin, or maybe let's say an 18 and a 14 vibe penguin. And they're not able to use any of the abilities on their own penguins. And so typically you play the Snow Globe on your final turn, and then you can kind of win from there. Your opponent might be able to survive one more turn with some action cards, but I find like when you pull this off, it's very hard for them to kind of deal with this. And so how do you play around this combo? Well, the best way to play around this combo is a few things. First of all, you need to have an answer for Penguin with Great Mystique. Ideally, you can remove it the turn it's played before it gets too big. And the second thing is you just want to hold back action cards just to make sure that once they play the Snow Globe, you can remove their penguins. Or, you might have something like a cleanup good or a buddy up or something for that final turn. So overall, if you can kind of feel that your opponent is playing this combo, just start thinking about, okay, when they pull the combo off, how do I react to it? And then it is definitely overcomable. The next combo is one of my favorite combos in the game, and it's one of the first ones that I ever really built a deck around. So the way this combo works is you have Peace Out Penguin, which says basically this penguin can only act if you've played a red action this cycle. Choose up to 2 penguins with vibe 10 or less, ice those penguins and this penguin. So you basically have a Peace Out Penguin on the board. Then you play again and again, which says the next time you play an action with pudge cost 2 this cycle, copy that action. All right, so you play the again and again, let it resolve. And then you play Trust Fall, which says choose a penguin, reduce its vibe by 2 for the rest of the cycle. If that penguin has 0 vibe, it can't be iced this cycle. Draw a card. So you basically now will play Trust Fall, and it will trigger twice because of again and again. And so you target your Peace Out Penguin with the Trust Fall, so its vibe goes down to 0 because it's been reduced by 2 twice. And so now you've also drawn, so you've drawn 2 cards, and you've spent 2 cards. So you spent again and again in Trust Fall, and you drew 2 cards, and your Peace Out Penguin now has a vibe of 0. So then you flop the Peace Out Penguin, and you can remove up to 2 penguins from your opponent. But the kicker is, even though Peace Out Penguin says ice this penguin, right? Trust fall says this penguin can't be iced, and the trust fall takes precedent over the peace out penguin. And so therefore you end up with a 0 vibe flopped peace out penguin. So when we think about this from card advantage math, I have now spent 2 cards, I've drawn 2 cards, and I've removed 2 cards from my opponent. So this gives me card advantage +2. So that's really good already. But what makes this combo even more crazy is you can combine it with red mega penguin and or have non-core. So let's just talk about this combo in its extreme form, right? Because if we have, or let's just talk about have non-core first, actually. So if we then play have non-core, we can basically unflop the peace out penguin, draw 1 more card, and then we can reflop it and remove 2 more penguins. So now all of a sudden, we've just drawn basically have non-core cycles itself, so card advantage neutral, and we can remove 2 more penguins with peace out penguin. If we have a red mega penguin on board, basically the trust fall and the have non-core each draw an additional card because of the way that Red Mega Penguin's ability works. So overall, this combo is super powerful. It does have a little bit of a challenge sometimes where it's really good against like a yellow deck or a deck with a lot of stuff on board. But some of these decks that don't have that many penguins on board, it can be hard to get full value out of the Peace Out Penguin. The other thing with it is it can be disrupted. So, for example, right, they start the combo and target the Peace Out Penguin with a double trust fall, and then I play Not Your Keys on the Peace Out Penguin. In that situation, right, their trust falls will fizzle, right, because the Peace Out Penguin will be gone before the trust falls actually are able to resolve. So then you actually remove the card draw from the trust fall. So in response, they could still use Peace Out Penguin to remove some of your penguins, but at that case, you end up basically getting a 2-for-1 because they've spent again and again in trust fall. And then I've used Not Your Keys to basically counter both of those cards. So yeah, so the way you play around this combo is just save removal for Peace Out Penguin, or set up your board in a way where Peace Out Penguin can't get a lot of good value. So, for example, if I have like 2 6-5 penguins, right, Peace Out Penguin can't remove both of them anyway. And so that's another way to just play around this combo is just try not to have penguins that add up to 10. Or one other thing you can do is if you play Not a Rod anymore, which is the saucy action that increases the vibe of a penguin by 2, I can basically play Not a Rod anymore to make the Peace Out Penguins effect fizzle because, right, let's say that you have a 6 vibe and a 4 vibe penguin. They use Peace Out Penguin on that. Then I play Not a Rod anymore. Now all of a sudden I have 2 6-5 penguins. And so then Peace Out Penguin will fizzle because the total vibe is not 10 or less. All right, the next combo is the centerpiece of the yellow Yum Yum deck. So the way the combo works is you've got Yum Yum, which says ice all penguins. It's an action that costs 5 pudge. You then have a penguin that doesn't mind goodbyes, which says whenever another yellow penguin in your huddle is iced, draw a card. And we also have Lucky Penguin, which says when this penguin is put into your ice from play, you may pick a yellow penguin from your ice with vibe 2 or less and put that into your huddle. So imagine the world where you have a board of, maybe a Lucky Penguin, penguin that doesn't mind goodbyes, and 3 other yellow penguins. Then you play Yum Yum. And so what's going to happen is all of your penguins get iced, but the penguin who doesn't mind goodbye, this trigger will actually trigger when the icing happens. So therefore, you will actually draw a card for every card for every yellow penguin you have, other than penguin that doesn't mind goodbyes. So, right, your opponent might have 5 penguins on board. You have 5 penguins on board. You play Yum Yum, and the net effect is you're going to draw 4 cards because of your yellow penguins that aren't penguin that doesn't mind goodbyes, plus one of your penguins from Lucky Penguin, right? One of the penguins that gets iced, as long as it's vibe 2 or less, will come back into play. So then you end up with basically still having 1 penguin on board. You've drawn 4 cards, and your opponent has just lost their entire board. One thing that's also interesting to note here is the way the timing of the triggers work. So, right, Lucky Penguin doesn't say whenever this penguin is iced, but it says whenever this penguin is put into your ice from play. And so the action of getting iced happens before the action of things being put into your ice from play. So this means that let's say you have no penguins with vibe 2 or less in your ice at the time that Yum Yum is played. Because of how Lucky Penguin is worded, and it doesn't say when this penguin is iced, it says when this penguin is put into your ice from play, it means Lucky Penguin can actually bring back penguins that were iced by the Yum Yum itself. So this means you don't need to set up this combo by having something already in your ice, which makes it even easier to pull off. The next combo is a combo that green decks can use as their win condition. So the way that this works is you're basically playing Everybody Stay Clam, which says flop all penguins in play, draw a card. And then you combo this with either Juggling Penguin or What a Twist. So What a Twist is a saucy action that says you can only play this action, right, if it's face down as a rod. Basically, choose a penguin and unflop it. So what happens is, so let's say that you have a board full of penguins. You play everybody say stay clam. Everything gets flopped, including your opponent's penguin. Then you play what a twist to unflop something, and then you win the vibe check. Now, one of the things with using what a twist in this way is right, you actually lose a permanent because what a twist, you end up losing a rod. So if you're going to combine stay clam with what a twist, you need to have at least 15 permanents at the time when you play for that final move. But that's where juggling penguin comes in. So instead of using what a twist, you can use juggling penguin, and that says enters flopped at the end of your action time. If you played an action, unflop this penguin. So you'll basically have the juggling penguin on the board, and notice it doesn't say green action; it just says any color action. So you'll play the juggling penguin, then you'll play stay clam. Everything will get flopped, and then at the end of the action time, right, your juggling penguin will unflop. So, right, juggling penguin is better than what a twist from the standpoint of you only need 14 permanents because you end up not losing a permanent. However, the nice thing about what a twist is you can unflop something like a Romulus because if your opponent is also having a what a twist, right, but the juggling penguin can be countered by having them unflop something bigger. So, how do you play around this combo? I think the best way to play around it is you just always want to have either removal for the juggling penguin. Like if they play a juggling penguin, you know this is happening because this is the only deck that plays juggling penguin right now is a deck that's trying to combo it with stay clam. And you also just need to run what a twist in your own deck. Luckily, right now, running what a twist is pretty common across the board. And this isn't really the main reason why people run it, but it definitely is a very useful like side reason to run what a twist is to be able to handle this combo. And so, right, if they have a juggling penguin on board, just save a what a twist and then unflop something that's bigger than the juggling penguin. And if they have their own what a twist, right, you just need to make sure that you have a bigger penguin than they have. One of the other nice things about this combo is it works pretty well against a green mega penguin because, right, your opponent cannot target green mega penguin with what a twist, right, because it can't be targeted by anything. So I've definitely been in games where I play this combo, and then even though they have a green mega penguin, which is bigger than any penguins on my side of the board, they're unable to unflop it with what a twist. And right, everyone stay clam, right? Because it says flop all penguins, it doesn't target, it doesn't ever choose green mega penguin, which is why green mega penguin still would get flopped with everyone stay clam. Speaking of green mega penguin, our next combo is green mega penguin with too much caffeine, and I'll put inspiring story here as a kicker. So this is one of the so this combo is a centerpiece of the green mega caffeine deck. And so the way that this works is you play green mega penguin, which basically says this penguin can't be chosen by anything. At the start of action time, put a vibe counter on this penguin. So you have this penguin that's kind of just slowly growing over time. And then you play too much caffeine, which says at the start of action time, each player may choose a penguin, flop those penguins. So you get to flop your opponent's biggest penguin, but then they try to flop your green mega penguin, but they can't because they can't choose it. And so, like, imagine green mega penguin and two or three too much caffeines. It really hampers your opponent's ability to do anything because they can't even flop their penguins for pudge because this happens at the start of action time. And then you combo that with an inspiring story or two. And now your green mega penguin, let's say it starts at 6 vibe. It's grown naturally to 9 vibe. You have two inspiring stories. All of a sudden, it's, maybe 13, 14, 15 vibe. And a 13, 14, 15 vibe penguin, right? Most decks can have one penguin that's bigger than that. But the problem is, if I have two or three too much caffeines on board, now all of a sudden they need 4 or 5 penguins that are bigger than the green mega penguin, which that is a difficult task for most decks. So this does lead people to do play what a twist in their deck. And so I think that's the main way to counter this is with ways to unflop your penguins. So let's say I have a Romulus who roams on the board, right? They can flop it with too much caffeine at the beginning of action time, but then I just unflop it on the final turn. And a Romulus paired together with maybe an inspiring story or a sliding penguin should be able to be bigger than the green mega penguin in most games. So but the thing with this combo is, right, it can come out really fast, especially if you win early vibe checks, you can get Green Mega Penguin out very early. And it's just the type of deck, it's this very aggressive deck that can just steamroll certain matchups. And especially if you get multiple too much caffeine down, it can really disrupt the game plan of your opponent. The other way to play around this is to have a way to remove the Green Mega Penguin with some sort of board clear. So decks that are running Send It Too Hard or Yum Yum, they're able to play around it like that as well. The next three combos are going to be the centerpieces of the Bizbunk deck, which is the only what I'll call like pure combo deck we have right now in the game. And so the first one is, right, the way that the Bizbunk deck works is you're just trying to ice your deck you're trying to ice your deck as quickly as possible. And there's two different combo machines within the deck for icing your deck. The first one is I'll call it like Penguin Who's Okay with card draw. So Penguin Who's Okay says whenever you draw a card, choose a player, ice the top card of their deck. And then you combine that with Brainy Penguin, and it's really nice from a fish perspective. You basically play Penguin Who's Okay on turn 2, and then on turn 3, you play Brainy Penguin, and it says, when this penguin enters the huddle, ice up to 2 cards from your hand, and then draw that many cards. So I'll play a Penguin Who's Okay on 2, then I'll play a Brainy Penguin, which means then I ice 2 cards from my hand, draw 2 cards, but then I also get to ice 2 cards from the top of my deck because of the Penguin Who's Okay. So in this way, Brainy Penguin actually lets me cycle through 4 cards of my deck. On top of that, then I use the Brainy Penguin in order to play Steady at Night, which basically has the same effect, which is draw 2 cards, ice 2 cards from your hand. So then I guess basically you get to draw 2 more cards, so remove 2 cards from my deck, and then ice 2 more cards from my deck. So overall, through this whole combo, like if you play this on turn 2 and 3, you end up what? You end up drawing 4 cards and icing 4 cards from your deck. Not to mention the Penguin Who's Okay is you're gonna be losing vibe checks because the vibe is only 2. So you end up icing maybe another 4 cards just naturally through Penguin Who's Okay with your start of turn draw and your vibe check draw. I will point out one thing, that Brainy Penguin and Study at Night are not exactly the same from the standpoint of with Brainy Penguin, you have to discard before you draw. And with Study at Night, you draw before you discard. And that makes Study at Night's effect much, much more powerful because you get to actually see what the 2 new cards are and then decide if you want to discard any of those. However, Brainy Penguin comes on a body and it produces the pudge to build Study at Night. So Brainy Penguin is not actually card disadvantage, but Study at Night is. Because if you think about Study at Night, you basically spend 1 card in order to get a net of 0 cards. So Study at Night is negative card disadvantage, whereas Brainy Penguin is basically neutral on the card advantage, card disadvantage side of things. That being said, card advantage is not very important for the Bizmo deck, for the Bizbunk deck, just because you're just like the way the deck works, there's like all this card, it's all I'll call it like pseudo card draw because there actually isn't a lot of card advantage in the deck, but it's just really working to set up this combo. And the deck just gets a lot of value of having cards in your ice. And so like you're willing to accept some card disadvantage in order to just build your ice up quickly. On top of that, the deck has this really weird like because it's not trying to get to 15, right? You don't really need that many rods. And so losing the vibe check is not a problem because you end up then you end up drawing 2 cards a turn because you get the extra draw at the end of the turn. And that's coupled with the fact that you never really need to get to 15 permanents. So, right, you often win the game with, let's say, 8 or 9 permanents. So you're not really on the same clock that your opponent is to try to get to 15. The other way that the Bizbunk deck basically ices a lot of cards is by using the combo centered around Ascending Penguin. So the way that Ascending Penguin works is it says whenever a penguin enters your huddle, ice cards from the top of your deck equal to half that penguin's vibe rounded up. All right, so you have an Ascending Penguin on the board, and then hopefully the same turn, you'll play either a Bashful Swordsman Penguin, which is basically 3 fish for 14 vibe, or a Penguin Who Breaks the Fourth Wall, which is 2 fish for 9 vibe. Now, Bashful Swordsman and Penguin Who Break the Fourth Wall are both extremely oversized penguins for their fish cost, which is why they work so well with Ascending Penguin. However, they do have some pretty strong downsides to them for most decks, right? Bashful Swordsman Penguin, right? It'll end up just icing itself at the end of the turn because it'll win the vibe check in most cases. And then Penguin Who Breaks the Fourth Wall basically says, you can't play this penguin from your hand, so you have to play from your ice. So that's already a big downside because it's most decks it's difficult to get it into your ice. But again, for the Bizbunk deck, that's not a problem at all because the whole deck is built around that. And then it says, playable from ice by icing 2 rods you control in addition to playing the fish cost. So then you're also losing 2 rods. But again, like I said, the Bizbunk deck doesn't really care about card advantage. Again, because Penguin Who Breaks the Fourth Wall is actually -1 card advantage as well, because you end up spending 2 rods to get 1 card, right? We don't count the Penguin Who Breaks the Fourth Wall as a card because it's coming from our ice from a card advantage perspective, but we still lose 2 rods, so it's still a 2 for 1, or basically -1 card advantage. And Bashful Swordsman is also -1 card advantage in most cases because it'll end up icing itself. However, right, the way Bizbunk works, you really want to just get to, let's say, 24 cards in your ice to pull off the final game-winning combo, which we'll get to in a second. So, right, each of these cards can really help you get to that point. Plus, on top of that, Penguin Who Breaks the Fourth Wall is really great at chaining with itself. So you play a penguin who breaks the fourth wall. You put 5 more cards in your ice because, right, it's also rounded up. So 9 divided by 2 is 4.5, up to 5. And maybe another penguin who breaks the fourth wall will show up in your ice. And so in this way, you can just very quickly ice large portions of your deck. The other nice thing about Bashful Swordsman is, yes, it ends up icing itself at the end of the turn, but you do end up winning that vibe check, which means you have initiative the following turn. And that means that your opponent is not able to react on that next turn. Because if you play Bashful Swordsman, in order to get to that like break point of number of cards in your ice, in order to pull off the Bizbunk combo, right? If your opponent gets a turn before you do, they could play a Silent Snowglobe or a Misplace in order to disrupt your combo. But if you have initiative, which the Swordsman provides to you, then you actually remove the ability for your opponent to play around that. So anyway, so if we combine Penguin, who's okay with the like purple card draw, with the Ascending Penguin, with these oversized penguins, we can quickly get our deck down to like the 24 to 26 cards in the ice. And then the next combo we'll talk about is the finisher for Bizbunk. So the way that this works is you have your Ascending Penguin, hopefully still from the previous combo, but if not, you can play it from hand. You need to have at least 6 rods. So you have 6 rods out, then you play Ascending Penguin, and then you play a Bunkus from your ice. So it says Bunkus says playable from ice. As you play Bunkus, put any number of cards from your ice on the bottom of your deck to reduce Bunkus's cost by that amount. Bunkus's vibe is twice the number of penguin cards in your ice. So you'll play a Bunkus and you'll get it basically make it free by removing cards from your ice. But when it enters the huddle, then Ascending Penguin will mean you ice cards equal to its vibe. So you basically play a Bunkus from your ice. It comes into the huddle, but then you end up icing more cards than you play the Bunkus for. Now, if I said, let's say you had 24 cards in your ice, in that situation, right, then Bunkus would come in with actually 12 vibe, and then you would ice 12 cards from your deck. So that would be actually neutral for your deck size. So then there's one other card that's part of this combo, which is What. And the way What works is when this card is in your ice the top card of your deck. So Bunkus, so when you like rotate your Bunkus to ice 12 cards, if there's, let's say that there's 2 or 3 Whats in those 12 cards, now all of a sudden you've like iced more cards than you've put in. So it really depends on how many cards you need in your ice to start this combo. So let's say if you have like 28 cards, it's very easy because you put Bunkus in, then you end up with 4 more cards in your ice, maybe with 6 more cards. And you basically chain 2 or 3 Bunkuses back to back, and then you empty your entire deck. Once your deck is empty, then you play Bizmo, which says whenever this penguin enters the huddle, if you have no cards in your deck, you win the game. So then you play Bizmo in order to win the game. So this is the game-winning combo of the Bizbunk deck. And right, the Bizbunk, the name of that comes from Bizmo with Bunkus together. And so again, like the last 3 combos we've talked about are all part of this deck, and that's why this is like just such a combo-heavy, powerful deck. So you basically you ice all these cards in your deck, and then you can kind of just automatically win the game on the spot with this combo. And our final combo, which in my opinion is the most powerful combo in the game right now, although, right, you could argue that all the Bizbunk combos together are more powerful, but this is just such a meta warping combo right now, which is you're basically taking Popcorn Penguin, which says at the start of your action time, ice the penguin in play that's vibing the least. If it's a tie, you pick, and then you combine it with ways to buff Popcorn Penguin. And the 2 best ways to buff it are Sliding Penguin, which says at the start of your action time, choose a penguin and boost its vibe by 2 for the rest of the cycle. And then you can also buff it with Inspiring Story, which says at the start of action time, boost the vibe of every penguin in your huddle by 2 for the rest of the cycle. So if you can get a Popcorn Penguin on the board, and then you buff it with a Sliding Penguin, then all of a sudden you have a 4 vibe Popcorn Penguin, and then maybe you make it 6 vibe. Most decks just cannot handle that because the Popcorn Penguin will just every turn remove an additional penguin from your opponent. And so this can just become such a card advantage engine. And on top of that, Popcorn Penguin's effect happens at the start of action time, which means that your opponent cannot counterplay. So it's not like an action card where they can, in response, play another action. So you pretty much are always guaranteed to get a 2-for-1 with Popcorn if you play it at the right time. Because, right, if you play Popcorn Penguin in a situation where it will remove 1 penguin from your opponent, they then have to still spend a card to get rid of it. The alternative is they can try to outlast it, but if they try to outlast it, right, then you'll just keep buffing it with Sliding Penguin or Inspiring Story, and then, right, so it's kind of scary to outlast it. Now, there are ways to play around it to make it just be a 1-for-1, because like right, you play Popcorn Penguin and then maybe they play a Mega Penguin in order to make the Popcorn Penguin's effect fizzle, or maybe something like a Penguin who zooms. But in general, you almost always come out card advantage positive with Popcorn Penguin. And Popcorn Penguin is just also really good right now, because there are just a lot of little penguins that need to be removed, such as Penguin Who's Okay, and the what's it called, the Ascending Penguin from the previous combo. So this combo is used by a few decks. So the Green Mega Caffeine deck that we talked about earlier, like that deck also uses this combo in it. But then there's also a lot of green decks that use this combo as well. You'll also see this combo in other decks, like even Bizbunk can play this combo. They just typically wouldn't play the Sliding Penguin, so they would just play Popcorn Penguin and Inspiring Story. So this combo is really, really good as well at trying to keep like more aggressive decks under control. So something like a yellow deck that tries to go really wide, if you're able to get this off early in the game, you'll be able to keep the board under control. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.